Hi guys, just putting out a super quick, low effort video today as I want to talk about the Fortune's Weave Direct before the hype cycle ends. Because I have, thoughts about it. First of all the small details look great. I love the turns system that's used between the matches. The side quest looks interesting. Seeing Solel pop up in one, for example, has made me infinitely more interested in him than all of his aura farming has. And I think the turn-based dungeons could be really interesting. Traditional turn-based RPG Fire Emblem spin-off when... The new classes all look sick too. I, for one, am so happy Charioteer and Elephant Riding isn't just locked to enemies. And I think None with a Gun is the single best unit in any Fire Emblem game whatsoever due to her overwhelming comedy stat. I also want to give a massive shout out to how much melanin is in this game. I, completely unironically, love it when my crusty white ass isn't represented because I am not exactly drowning in a lack of white characters over here. In fact, my one critique is that there is too many white people in Fortune's Weave. The only ones allowed should be Dietrich and to a lesser degree Fabio, as he's probably actually a mole man in disguise and therefore only sort of counts. Okay, fine. Bad dye job Seteth can stay too as a treat. But, well, this is me, and I am a hater at heart. Suffice to say, some of the things revealed in the Direct worry me. First of all, there's what seems to be the main antagonist, Miss Demon King Baby Woman. While intelligent systems could pull one out from under us and reveal her hidden depths, as is, I think she and her undead army are deeply boring. To explain why, we need to look back at Three Houses. Spoilers ahead. While the Agarthans, a generic evil villain group with minimal depth, did exist. To achieve their goals, they needed the aid of flawed, multifaceted people. While their actions set Three Houses' greater conflict into motion, ultimately, it's Rhea's, Dimitri's, and Edelgard's trauma that leads to the war. If Rhea hadn't run the Church of Ceres as a pro-feudalism, draconic institution, Edelgard would not have rebelled against her. If Patricia and Fargus's nobles weren't desperate for either their child or simple banal power, the tragedy of Fargus would never have happened, and the war between them and the Empire could potentially have been averted. Yes, the shape-shifting mole people certainly stir things up, but the main factions of the game are the Empire, the Kingdom, the Alliance, and the Church, not the Agarthans. The conflict that occurs in Three Houses is deeply and genuinely human. It's a thing born from trauma, desperation, and an inability to reach out to each other. It's not a thing that exists because Rhea, Edelgard, Dimitri, or Claude are bad guys just because. Even the Agarthans, who suck, at least have a proper motive. They were Fodlan's original inhabitants, and they want to kill off the men made by the person who committed genocide against them, so they could return to the surface. What makes Three Houses so compelling is that every side has a point and acts in realistic ways to achieve said point. Compare this to Miss Undead Evil Demon King Army Summoner Lady. Her apparent motives are something completely ungrounded in any sort of reality. Her faction, as presented in the trailer, is some peak evil for the sake of evil tribe, which is completely antithetical to everything that made Three Houses so good. This is a plot element that belongs in Awakening or Fate's world. Undead Demon King armies are nonsensical in Three Houses' more grounded setting. Look, I love a Preventing the Apocalypse time travel story as much as the next person, but it would have been way cooler if, instead of evil zombies, Dagda was destroyed due to the four protagonists' actions. If Dietrich accidentally enabled an Agarthan cell, if the strange rock in Kai's hand possessed him, If Laerda's rage led to the death of a man who could have saved them all, if Theodora's religious beliefs made her prone to manipulation by a false goddess, if Eshmel had to go back and save them all, not so they could fight in the bloody zombie war, but so they could stop a civil conflict that led to Dagda's grisly fate in the present. On that topic, we need to talk about Eshmel. They shouldn't exist. I am tired of Fire Emblem games rolling around bland-ass, self-insert avatars. Now, characters like Chris and Mark don't bother me, as they are just fun player cameos and don't play a major role in the story. That's fine. Corrin, Aaliyah, and Byleth, however, each of whom are the specialist little creature in the entire universe, bore me. None of them get to have hugely interesting, compelling personalities. Instead, just being virtuous and nice, with no particular depth, or just flat out being a silent protagonist, just in case the self-insert acts in a way the player finds disagreeable. This sucks, as it makes these avatars feel so much more shallow and bland compared to far more interesting characters around them. Well, in Corrin's and Byleth's case anyway. I am not going to lie and pretend that anyone in Engage is particularly, well, engaging. Secondly, these avatars all tend to be chosen ones in some way, which is a trope that I find quite dodgy, as they are ultimately special due to the circumstances of their birth/creation, as opposed to their actions. So why do I hate this trope? Firstly, it's, well, a little bit eugenicsy, and before you argue that Aaliyah is an exception due to them being a fell dragon, they're still a special dragon baby. Thirdly, why do we even need avatars in Fire Emblem games? Why do the players feel like they need to not just physically appear in these worlds, but also exist as the specialist person in it? It feels a bit self-absorbed in a way that doesn't totally jive with me. I think a protagonist who has no special background nor powers, but saves the world due to their virtuousness, is way more interesting, especially in a setting where physical gods walk amongst the populace. In fact, that's half of what makes Kai, Laerda, Dietrich, and Theodora so compelling to me. So to hear that in the second half of the game, they get their role usurped by God's specialist creature again, I'm annoyed. I would have been fine with it if Eshmel was a supporting character, but as a lead, they sound as boring as hell. If Intelligent Systems had to get rid of Kai and the likes post-time skip, why couldn't the time traveler have just been a previously child character who knew them all in the past and had earned Fortuna's favour in the present day? Don't get me wrong, I am still excited about this game. I was worried, however, when I first saw Koei Tecmo wasn't involved with the writing this time, and this trailer has only compounded my fear that Fortune's Weave will be so much shallower than its predecessor. Between yet another plot-devouring avatar unit and some deeply disinteresting villains, Intelligent Systems seems to be lapsing back into its old, done-to-death Fire Emblem tropes. And I don't want that for Fortune's Weave. Still, for all I know, I could one day look back at this video and laugh about how wrong I was. In fact, I hope that's what happens. I hope the Demon King turns out to have hidden depths. I hope Eshmel is actually a really charming lead who doesn't completely overshadow the other four main characters. At this stage, however, I am excited for Fortune's Weave, but also a little bit apprehensive.